Well, John Glover was somebody who I was a huge fan of. I knew, and also knew a lot of people who knew him. I didn't know him personally, but we had, because I'd been working in theater in New York, and he's based in theater in New York, and we had friends in common, or at least acquaintances in common. I'd seen him on stage, seen him in film. Just always thought he was a great actor. I mean, I think 52 Pickup is like just one of the great, great performances of all time. I mean, if you haven't seen it, see it. It's a good movie. It's a great performance. And it's funny because the character was originally written as older, and my initial image was somebody older, somebody more towards the end of their career, and this was sort of their last chance to step up. I think I was thinking about people more along the line of Charles Durning or people like that, who was younger then, although he was still older. That was sort of my cliched image in my head. But then somebody either suggested John, I don't remember how it came up, but I immediately got intrigued by the idea. Because I thought, well, if Leon is younger, it changes a lot of dynamics. First of all, he's kind of like one of the boys. Second of all, that ambition is a whole other base to come out of. I mean, he's just another Archie. He's another guy, trying to manipulate the situation, but sort of as one of them. And it also seemed a little less cliched. It's a little less the old, the old line guy at the Catholic school. So that appealed to me, but it would specifically was with him. I don't know if I could have, if I had an actor that excited me less, I probably would have stuck more to my original image. But when somebody said, well, what about John Glover? And he might do this, and he's open to doing things like this, I was like, for something like that, maybe you change your image. And I've always tried to stick to that as a director. You have certain images of a character, what they look like, but when a really good idea comes up that doesn't fit that, but they're really good as an actor, you kind of start going, well, maybe this gives us something different. So because people said, he might do this, he would maybe work with a first-time director, it's not a waste of time, we sent him the script, and I sent him a cover letter saying, you might know who I am, here's some people we know in common and some friends we have, and I love your work, and I would be honored if you'd consider this, and please be part of this movie, and we have no money, and we'll only be paying scale, and we're only paying everybody scale, but that's all there is. And very, very quickly got a call back that he had read it and loved it, and in fact, he called me directly, as I remember. I don't even think it was his agent, and he even said, well, did you want me to come in and audition? And I was like, no, dude, no, that's not, not the point at all. So I said, no, I would just be thrilled if you wanted to do this. And so it was really easy. I mean, it was ridiculously, it's so screwed up in a way. I had this whole first experience on Chocolate War that was so easy on every front, getting the money to make the movie, getting my cast, Since then, I've realized normally making a film is crawling over cut glass for 8 years. That's normally what it's like. I was completely spoiled. And so, I wanted John Glover. John Glover. Okay. It was like, just, okay, that's what, I should have said, yeah, I'd like Laurence Olivier to play, teacher number 3, and I probably would have gotten him. So John was that easy. And once he was in, and he was up for rehearsal, he was up for whatever, and stayed fabulous to work with through the entire experience. And in fact, was a huge ally for me because I was such a young director, and the young guys were all really cool, but there was a bit of a competitive thing, and they would look at me as, wow, he's not much older than us. And the fact that John came in and treated me with such respect and deferred to me so easily and smoothly, I think set a really important tone in terms of the crew, the cast, everybody. I think that just kind of established, oh, well, this guy's been in 60 movies and he's a really known established actor. If he's listening to this guy, I guess we should too. Also, John's professionalism, I think, set a tone. I mean, the fact that John never bitched, never complained. Part of making a movie is you sit around and, you're called in and we think you're going to need you at a certain time and then you don't. And again, people can get cranky, and John never got cranky, which made it then really hard for a young actor X to get cranky because they're looking at this guy going, well, how can I bitch about it? So John was an enormous help on that level as well, and was having just great ideas. I mean, John was somebody who had that perfect actor thing of, he was always full of ideas and suggestions, but then he had no ego about them. If I went, that's not going to work, and here's why. He would always say, great, well then let's do it your way, or let's come up with a third way. You always want your actors to be coming up with better ideas than you have, but you don't want them to get obsessed with them, because sometimes actors may have a great idea from a performance standpoint, but it may be terrible for the movie. But John really was interested in the movie. I mean, he was really first and foremost like, well, what works for the film? So that was John. In terms of the supporting roles, there was we got Jenny Wright to play a character I think I called Lisa. I don't think she had any name in the in the book, if I remember correctly. But I think I called her Lisa because my first girlfriend's name was Lisa, and this was Jerry's first girlfriend, so I thought, oh, that's appropriate. And that was actually a part, originally I wanted Rachel, my Frau, to play. You know, we had just started going together at that point, and she was just starting as an actress, and I thought, wow, she's perfect, young woman, looks great for this. And that was the one time where Jonathan said, listen, yeah, I know she's your girlfriend, I want to get somebody famous in this movie, and this is the one girl's part. Like, okay, you know, and I couldn't really argue. They were being so good to me on every other front. It was like, what was I going to do, say no? So we sort of made an agreement that if I couldn't get somebody from a short list of people, then Rachel could play the part. But somebody who was quite hot at that moment was Jenny Wright. And Jenny and I had been in a play together in New York. And I knew would be really good for the role. I doubted she would do it because she was at that point, you know, she had just done some big movie with Anthony Michael Hall, and she was in all. She was just like really a hot upcoming actress, and this isn't that big a part. So I was actually very surprised when she said yes. But we'd had a good time doing the play together, so I guess it was just she thought it'd be fun to come and, you know, spend a few days, and it was only a few days' time. So I was both thrilled and heartbroken when she said yes, because that kind of knocked Rachel out of the position. But it was, you know, it was great to have Jenny, who I knew that well, and we'd worked together, so we knew each other's, you know, way of working and quirks, and I knew she'd be very good with, you know, rehearsing and improvising. But we also did audition before. I remember I actually read Cheryl Lee up in Seattle, who at that point had never done anything, and of course Cheryl ended up in my movie Mother Night years later, and at that point, and she'd been like modeling. But we were like, well, let's, you know, we're up here, we should read some of the local people in case or whatever. And I think some of the guys at MCG said, we'll just put some women on tape up there, just so we have that. And Cheryl came in, and she was, even then, man, was she gorgeous. I remember that was one of those things where, you know, you meet women very rarely and you get tongue-tied. I actually got tongue-tied. It was like, I had that. And she was sweet and she was wonderful, and that was that. And then there I was working with her like 6 years later.
It was at this point in history that man first ventured from the caves and began to deal with an increasingly hostile environment.
Bud Court was a case where Bud was managed by MCEG, by Jonathan Crane, and they called and said, well, would you want Bud to be in the movie? And like, Bud was like one of my heroes because of Harold and Maude. I mean, I grew up on Harold and Maude. And I couldn't believe that he'd want to be in the movie, but they said, sure, so I was like, okay. And then, of course, I completely blew it with Bud at first because I thought he'd want to improvise, and so I didn't even write the dialogue for Brother Jacques in very much because I wanted him to, you know, just feel like, hey, you're Bud Court, you know, as long as we get the idea down, run with it. And of course he went, I'm an actor, I don't know, there's nothing in the script, how can I do this? So he almost quit the movie out of my trying to do this really nice thing, and only later did we finally talk enough that I went, oh, dude, I can write a scene for you. I was trying to be cool for, you know. And then we had a great time together. But boy, I came this close to losing him by trying to be clever. Probably the scene that was most exciting, or the one that was most, well, because it was the scene that was scariest and I thought was going to be the worst disaster. So that's the fact that it became the best scene in the film was a real relief. Was the scene where, early in the film, where John Glover is teaching the class and ends up hitting Bailey in the eye, and it's almost essentially a monologue, and it is a monologue, and it goes on for about 6 minutes. And it's almost directly from the book. I can't take any real credit on the writing. It's a brilliant scene that Cormier wrote in the book. And it was the last day of shooting, and John Glover got deathly ill. I mean, like 103, 104 fever, could not speak, throwing up, looked like he was dying. A doctor came in and said, you know, he should not be acting, he cannot do this. And it was the last day of shooting. We couldn't push it. We didn't have the money. That's the thing about when you have a $500,000 budget, you can't like, oh, we'll come back next week and do this. And I was very depressed, and I thought, you know, the story doesn't need this scene. We can tell the movie without the scene. It's sort of the core of the movie in a way. It's sort of the thematic whole identity of the movie in a way, but you could actually put the film together without it. So we were really on the verge of pulling the plug, and John was like, listen, this seems why I wanted to do the movie. Let me just try. And I had this very complicated shot that we were going to do early, you know, at the beginning of it, where the camera goes all the way around. It's sort of a 360 shot, and there's window light and interior light, which is a real pain in the butt to deal with because they're one's much brighter than the other. But we let John stay in bed, get as much fluid as he could to the last possible second, and brought him in and did it. And I kind of was very doubtful we were going to get through it and that he was going to get through it. And about halfway through the first take, I realized not only are we getting through it, but John's brilliant. And he's nailing the whole thing, and he's doing a 6-minute monologue while semi-conscious, and it's great.
Only a genius is capable of that kind of performance. Do you claim to be a genius, Bailey? I'll admit you look like one. Those big ears and that little face all pinched up and that little tiny kind of baby walk you do. Oh, God.
And basically, I think we only did it about 3 times. I mean, it was just, you know, and I don't know if he could have done it more. But he was so damn good and so generous. And he literally would collapse. I mean, it's funny, you look at that scene, and he's very vigorous. Although if you look at it, and knowing this now, and listen to his voice, you can hear the raspiness. You can hear a little raspiness in his voice. But I'm telling you that between takes, he was like that. I mean, he had no voice. I mean, it was like... And then we roll, and he'd have the... well, he wasn't being like dramatic actor guy. I mean, we had a doctor saying this man should be like in a hospital. And so that was probably the most exciting thing, because it just was something I didn't think I was going to have. And then it ended up in the film better than I ever thought it was going to be. So that, to me, was probably the biggest moment of, oh my God, this is not only happening, but it's kind of gone from a disaster to a miracle. But there were a lot of, you know, when you direct your first movie, you're a virgin at everything, so everything's amazing.